Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hammer Territory podcast. This is episode 263. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening, September the 7th, and I'll be joined in just a few moments by a good friend of the podcast, a special guest on today's show. His name is Grant McAuley. Grant is a Braves insider for 92.9 The Game, as well as the From the Diamond podcast. He does a fantastic job covering the Braves all year round. Grant's a friend of the show, and he'll be with me in a moment. First up, some nuts and bolts and maybe a little bit of a rant coming up, but I do encourage you, if this is your first time on the podcast, usually it is a couple of us. There are four hosts of Hammer Territory: myself, Scott Coleman, Sean Coleman, Stephen Tolbert. Usually it is a combination of two of us or three of us, but today it's just me, and then it'll be Grant in a second. But please subscribe to Hammer Territory anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so please like this video as you are watching it. Tell your friends about the show. We definitely appreciate everyone sticking with us through basically what has been the season from hell for the Braves. And that is still going on right now. They have now lost 3 consecutive series. They were absolutely blasted the last 2 days by the Seattle Mariners. Not much on the positive side to discuss from this weekend in particular. A couple of things, maybe Matt Olson hit his longest home run of the season, a 459-foot absolute tank of a blast. Jurickson Profar homered again. He's still been pretty good, of course. Chris Sale has been just absolutely lights out for a long time now. Not a lot else going on, but Sale now has a 1.26 ERA in his last 12 starts. Just ludicrous stuff from Chris Sale. But look, the Braves allowed 18 runs on Sunday. 18 runs. That's the second time in about 10 days that they've allowed 18 runs or more, because they allowed 19 runs about 10 days ago to the Phillies. In the last 55 years, dating back to 1970, the Braves have allowed 18 runs or more only 15 times in 55 years. 2 of those 15 have been in the last 10 days. They have not allowed 18 runs in a game since 2015 before then. So they went basically 10 years without allowing 18 runs or more, and they did it twice in 10 days. And that, of course, speaks to this season, of course, but also to the state of the pitching staff right now. While some of the bullpen guys have been good lately, Russell Iglesias has been awesome for a while, for example. The state of the pitching staff, top to bottom, is not very good. And then the lack of competitiveness right now with where the Braves are, their lack of incentive to push hard sometimes on guys who might need an extra break or whatever because the games don't matter right now. All that said, it was a disaster the last 2 days after a win against Seattle on Friday. It's been rough, and the Braves just lost 2 games in 2 days by a total score of 28-4. 28-4. That is obviously pretty dire. On the news front, Cal Quantrill got released by the Braves a few days ago. That was the end of a saga that we've covered ad nauseum on this show, but that's not officially over since our last episode on the podcast. And also the Braves claimed 28-year-old reliever Alexis Diaz off of waivers from the Dodgers on Sunday. He was legitimately good in 2022 and 2023 with the Reds, even made an all-star team with Cincinnati a couple years ago. He was pretty solid-ish last year as well, having a rough 2025 across 2 different teams. But the Braves basically take another free shot at a potential reliever that they can fix them. Kind of in the mold, not exactly the same thing, but kind of in the mold of the Tyler Kinley buy low, scoop of a guy who has a chance to make the team next year, be around for a while. We'll see. Also, he is the brother of Mets closer Edwin Diaz. So a familiar name if you're a diehard baseball fan, but certainly a low-cost, basically no-cost flyer in the bullpen, and we'll see how that goes. Now, before I bring in Grant, I did not want to trouble him. Grant is a respected reporter. He's in the clubhouse regularly with the Braves, and I wanted to deliver I would say pretty rare kind of rant about a subject. So if you're a new listener, this is not the norm. If you're a recurring listener, you will know that already, but I feel obliged to offer something of a rant about a topic. And I want to preface this by saying something very important that I think would probably be obvious if you were thinking about this clearly. But I've already seen people misinterpreting my thoughts and the thoughts of others on social media. I am well aware that this season, 2025, is effectively over for the Braves. It's been over for a while. I get that. You're playing out the string. You're looking for things to talk about for next year. It's all about informing the future, not the present. And nothing I'm going to say is ignoring that. I promise you, I understand that the games don't matter, and that is not why I'm bothered by this. Be very clear about that. At the same time, nothing drives me crazier, as the person who founded this podcast in another form almost 10 years ago now, nothing drives me crazier than decisions that make no sense to me and others. And this is one of those things. And that is that Ronald Acuna hit 6th in the lineup on Saturday, and then hit 7th in the lineup on Sunday. Now, again, I am not telling you that batting order matters that much. It doesn't. I'm not telling you that I'm going over the lineup card every night with a fine-tooth comb right now. I am not, because it doesn't matter. And I get that. But for context, Ronald Acuna Jr. has not hit below 4th in the lineup any time since 2018. That is the norm for a superstar player. But when asked about the decision on Saturday, Brian Snitker said that he, quote, just wanted to change the view a little bit, and also said, quote, sometimes you move guys up and down just to change the vantage point, end quote. That's all fine and good, except that that's not really true. This does not happen with superstar players, nor should it. Also, the weird thing, Ronald's been bad, as we'll come back to in a second. He reached base in half of his plate appearances on Saturday. Batting 6th, he walked twice in four plate appearances, which is good, obviously. Then he moved down a spot on Sunday. Curious. Now, again, I get it. There is a school of thought that I've already been greeted with on social media that says, well, Acuña's not playing well, so he should move down the order. That's just not how this works. I mean, you can disagree with that, I guess, but for a player of his stature, and yes, that matters to me, it should matter to you as well, his track record, all those things. Also, I would generally avoid small samples in baseball because it's the ultimate large sample size sport. But yes, Ronald is actually having a bad stretch. He had a terrible 9-game stretch the last week and a half or so. He has not been very good overall since returning from the injury in mid-August. I am granting that. I'm not arguing that. It's absolutely true. But it's also quite literally 88 plate appearances since he came back from the injury about 3 weeks ago. For reference, in the entire month of August, 1 month, Jurickson Profar had 138 plate appearances by himself. 50 more plate appearances that we're talking about for Ronald Acuna Jr. and the supposed apparent freak out about this slump that he's having. This is less than a month of results for a player with a superstar record of performance in his prime. Also, for the season, he has a 147 WRC plus and an 886 OPS. 17% walk rate, elite batted ball profile. It's all there for you. He has been Ronald Acuna Jr. this season. Again, not playing well recently. I get that. It's his worst slump in a long time. I get that. That does not mean you move the best player on your team and a top 10 player in the universe down to 6th or 7th in the lineup, even when the games don't matter. For more evidence, Ronald Acuna is 8th in Major League Baseball in WRC plus since the moment he debuted in 2018. So when I said this today, people were like, well, he's more of an all-around player, not a great hitter. That's not true. Ronald Acuna Jr. is a great hitter. Is he the best hitter in baseball? No. Is he a top 10 hitter in baseball? Yes. These are the guys who have a better WRC plus, which is a catch-all offensive only metric, just at the plate, not running, not defense, just at the plate. There are 7 guys who have been better than him cumulatively since 2018. Aaron Judge, Yordan Alvarez, Mike Trout, Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Mookie Betts. That's it. And by the way, none of those guys drop to 6th or 7th in the order, ever. Nor should they. If you want to bring it closer to home, for example, and use some relatively analogous players. And by the way, I use relatively because there's no one on the team that is the same as Ronald Acuna Jr. The Braves have other guys who have been star-level players. No one on the current roster has ever been where Acuna has been as the MVP of the league. But Austin Riley, who is not as good as Ronald Acuna Jr., has not hit below 5th in the lineup since 2022. Austin Riley is not as good as Ronald Acuna Jr., and he's had some well-documented slumps over that time. He's never fallen below 5th in the lineup, ever. Not once in that time in 3 years. For another, Matt Olson, who everyone knows I love. I love Matt Olson. He's never once hit 7th in the order as a Brave. Never once. Nor should he, for the record, but still. Non-Braves, Aaron Judge, who is a better hitter than Ronnie, I understand that, since 2017 has never hit below like 4th or 5th in the lineup. And that's before he was actually Aaron Judge. He wasn't actually Aaron Judge then. Mookie Betts, last time he hit this 6th or lower in the order, 2015. Freddie Freeman has not hit 7th or lower since 2012. And that includes his time with the Braves. Keep that in mind. Same manager. Freddie Freeman never, ever, ever felt anything like this in the order, even when he was slumping. If you want to go off the beaten path to a more recent player, Lindor of the Mets, superstar player, has never hit this low in his entire career. I could go on, and I promise you I have more of these. I'll stop. But there's just no reason for this. And again, I am not saying this impacts anything for this year results-wise. It could not be less about that. It is not about that. It's a process failure for no reason. And I get Step I believe that it's like going to shake it up or whatever. That's not what you do to established superstar players. And I shared this on Twitter, and I'll move on, I promise. I had 3 different people who are in the media, but they are people who professionally cover other teams, not the Braves. They don't cover they don't cover the Braves. They cover other teams. And I know them either for basketball stuff or baseball stuff or whatever. People that I am friendly with, but who are professional media people, reached out to me on their own without me asking at all over 24 hours, 3 of them, to ask what was going on with Ronald Acuna Jr. Because why would he be batting 6th or 7th in the lineup? That's how weird this is. That's a good, it's maybe anecdotal, but people with zero investment in the Braves are baffled by this and thinking that there has to be some like weird reason for this. Like, what is going on? Is he being punished? Like, what's going on here? No, it's just a weird thing. Like, no one does this. No one at this level. And again, guys who are worse than him, sure. If he was 0 for 100, I would understand it a little bit more, and I still wouldn't do this for the record. But he's not 0 for 100. Like, it's not what is happening here. If he had been having a terrible season and it's September and it's been 6 months of this, I'd understand this more. But that's not where we are. He's having a bad 3 weeks. And if it's a health thing, he shouldn't be playing. So if it's a health thing, and that's your explanation, which is the Braves haven't said that. But if that's what the actual excuse is, then you don't play him. You don't bet him lower in the lineup if you're worried about that. So my co-host Sean Coleman, I will offer this and I'll sign off on this segment of the podcast. Sean offered a tongue-in-cheek idea on Twitter that I thought was funny. He suggested that Snit is perhaps, quote, cherishing his final month as Braves manager by batting his best hitter in the batting spot that corresponds with the day of the month, because Ronnie hit 6th on the 6th and 7th on the 7th. And then Sean said, I wonder what the surprise will be when it's the actual 10th of September and beyond. Obviously, that's a joke, but it is just very, very odd. I don't know what's going to happen on Monday. Maybe he'll go back to hitting in the top 4 of the lineup. He should probably hitting leadoff, if not leadoff, certainly the top 3 or 4 of the lineup. But here we are. I'll probably get emails about this, comments about this. I understand, but man, it's weird, and I don't really understand what was going on here and why this would happen. And it's more bizarre. If you leave it to yourselves to decide why this is happening, I don't really have an idea. But it's silly. It shouldn't happen, and you probably want to treat your best player with a little bit more deference than this. It's just kind of silly. All right. Before we come back with Grant, who will be joining me in a second, a word from our partners on the podcast. Football is back, and so is your shot at big wins. With DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL, your game day instincts can score you real money fast. Here's the play. Just pick more or less on 2 or more stats from breakout rookies to elite QBs and unlock the upside every snap brings. The better your calls, the bigger your payout. And here's a kickoff bonus. New DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This season, play your player instincts. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL. Play just $5, get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks, make the call, ride the upside in partnership with DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. I'm joined now by a great friend of the podcast, fresh off his duties doing post-game for the Atlanta Falcons. Grant McAuley is here. How are you?
I'm doing well. I haven't even gotten a chance to change uniforms yet, but it sounds like Sunday, the weekend for both teams, unfortunately, didn't go the way that folks wanted it to go.
Yeah, I know our listenership is not all Falcons fans, so I won't do my prepared Falcons rant. I already did one rant on this podcast before I brought you in. No more Falcons stuff for today. It was not a lot of fun, typical Falcons in some ways. But anyway, I appreciate you doing this, Grant. Look, there's a lot to talk about. We all know the deal here. This is not a good baseball team this season. They're playing out the string. We kind of get that. But I haven't had you on this show. You have talked a little bit in other places. I want to know, what you're feeling like with this team right now? I know it's the situation is what it is, but are you in the camp of like, you know what, throw this one away and we'll get him next year? Are you feeling down in the dumps? I know whenever we talk to anybody, could be regular fans, people, it's like I get a pretty big range on how people are feeling about the overall Braves experience. Where are you at on this thing in early September?
I don't know. I think you can kind of split the difference, or maybe it's equal parts like disappointment, but also just trying to be realistic or pragmatic. I mean, that's the word that I really strive for. I mean, it is what it is in terms of like what the record is. And ultimately, and we talked about this early in the year where it was, okay, well, maybe some of these things will change, but at some point you are who you are. And the record tells you what you are. And we know that the Braves this year have suffered through a challenging season that has turned into a lost season. Now, some people were ready to say that after the first road trip. I wanted to wait a little bit longer to see if maybe some things were going to come together for this club and that they were going to have health on their side, maybe more so this year than last year. That turned out not to be the case, but that's just one of the many stories and one of the many disappointments for this team because they spent 3 months basically not hitting. And then in the second half, they've started hitting what I would say definitely is enough to be a competitive team, but it still comes in waves. It's still not as consistent as you'd like it to be. It's not all the familiar names. It's certainly not the familiar lineup. So there's that, which I know we'll get into later in terms of leadoff and the middle of the lineup. And now I guess the bottom of the lineup, everything's being affected by this. But long story short, I just think you kind of have to come to terms with it, accept it. I mean, grief is not a straight line. It's a process. And sometimes we go backwards to go forwards or whatever. But yeah, I think that ultimately it's a disappointment for the Braves. I mean, nobody knows it more than they do. I talked to some of these guys this past homestand against the Mariners. I got a chance to spend a lot of time with Austin Riley, and I will have that interview on my show coming up this coming week. And look, I mean, everybody understands what didn't go right this year, and everybody is ready to, I think, turn the page and move on. But you are contractually obligated to play the month of September. And unfortunately, that's not going to move the needle very much for the Braves. But are there some things inside of these games that we can mark some progress and maybe take away some question marks for what the winter looks like and then ultimately what next year looks like?
Absolutely. And one of the many reasons why it's great to talk to you is that you are in the clubhouse and you do talk to these guys and you can dispel some of the, I don't want to call them lazy, but some of the things you see out there about how guys don't care and they're just, and I get it. Like it has to be challenging, even as a professional athlete, to go out there in some ways when you know the game doesn't really mean anything. That has to be a challenge. But these guys are still professional athletes and they're playing for all kinds of different things. Don't give away your whole thing with Austin, but like, you get the feeling that they obviously know what's happened, but every day going to the park, like for instance, they have 6 more games at home, 7 games more at home this week. How do these guys go into this? Like, how are they approaching the last 3 weeks of the season, knowing that it's the dead zone, but also some guys are playing for contracts. I mean, Marcell Ozuna is going to be a free agent. Guys like that. Like, I know a lot of guys are locked up. That's one of the narratives too. It's like all these guys don't care because they're all paid in the future. They still care, man. Like, I know you're there. You're there all the time. But am I crazy? It feels like that narrative is just always out there, and I have a hard time getting people to realize that these guys do want to win. They do want to have things go well.
Yeah, I mean, that's misplaced at best, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's a lazy narrative. It's just, it doesn't fit. I mean, can you be disappointed about the results? Absolutely. Can you want some accountability for the results? Absolutely. Can you want change and improvement? And there's the other thing, and I always think about this quote when I think about really baseball or life is people don't like change, they like improvement, and they haven't seen that from the Braves. They didn't see it last winter. They certainly didn't see it in the play this year, and there is a degree of accountability that you want to have for that everybody will not just look at it, and to use the other phrase you always hear, like, are the Braves just going to run it back and think that's going to work because it didn't work this year? I think that a large percentage of the roster, because you know who you have, that should be a good thing. It shouldn't be a detriment. And I certainly don't think that guys got paid and decided, hey, we're not, we have no personal pride in what we do now, and we're just here for a paycheck, and it doesn't matter if we do good, bad, or indifferent. I've never gotten that impression from anybody. And it's a good way to get yourself off the Braves or any other team if people start to get that idea, especially the other 25 guys that you're playing with, the coaching staff or the fan base, that, hey, I just don't care what happens. I've not experienced that at all. I think, and I talked about this on social media yesterday, so now we can just go fully down the rabbit hole. We ascribe a lot of things based on what the perceived mood is, or the results dictate the mood, and vice versa. It really depends on which angle you come from, but these are professionals who are, competitive, but that doesn't mean it's always going to go their way. And the opposing pitcher has a say in it. The opposing team has a say in it. Sometimes it ain't your year. And I think that we can all sit here at this point in the first week of September and recognize, and probably have recognized for a while, it ain't the Braves' year. But I'd still think that there is an optimism, guarded or otherwise, that they are going to, with a lot of the cast of characters that we know, figure out a way moving into 2026 to get back to what they're doing. They're going to have some health go right. They're going to have to make some transactions, I believe, that will help energize this lineup and maybe to cover for some areas and improve some areas that haven't been able to perform up to the standard that they need to be the club that they want to be. But no, I mean, I don't think it's crazy. And I understand the frustration. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
Sure.
nobody enjoys losing. They're not enjoying losing. It's not a good time. Like, nobody wants to have that conversation about, okay, well, we thought you guys were going to be good. Why aren't you good? I mean, who has an answer for that? Usually nobody. And whether it's in my job, your job, or their job, it's not fun to know that you're not performing to the level that you expected to, and the level that ultimately, I mean, nobody's, well, I guess maybe some people might be rooting for you or for me to have a good day or a good broadcast or write a good article or whatever. But obviously the stakes are a lot higher for these guys and commensurate with what they're being paid. But before I get completely lost in a philosophical rant that probably leads us nowhere, I can tell you that they do care, and that the overall attitude is, look, we've got to come in today and try to win a baseball game. And then we're going to come in tomorrow and try to win another baseball game. I've heard that from, guys that have been here all season, guys that have been here for years, guys that have been managing or coaching in the organization for 49 years, or Ha-Seong Kim, who's been here for a week and was asked, okay, well, down the stretch, even though it's a lost year, are you looking forward to ruining the season for some other teams potentially? And he said, no, we're not necessarily focused on that. We've got an opportunity to win a game every day, and that's what we're going to go try to do. So as boring, as cliche, as cookie cutter, or whatever as it is, that's still what they're looking to do. And it may not move this season from the category of a disappointment to a success, but I do think that there is a certain amount of personal pride that still has them out there attempting to do the best that they can. It's just some years where your best just isn't good enough. And that's just kind of how sports works.
FT fam, designer clothes can be expensive, but we want our clothes to look good. We want to feel good. We want them to be affordable. And Kratz, if you tell me that I can wear a t-shirt that looks like it's tailored, but it's not actually tailored, and it just comes that way, then sign me up for True Classic.
Have to. You got to sign up for it, because these shirts are soft, they're thin, they're durable, and they're very versatile. You can wear them to the gym. You can wear them out to a nice dinner. Let's get after it, because these shirts are the real deal.
They are. Check it out. I've got one of the performance ones. It's a nice blue, fits well. I can go to the gym. I can go out. I can do FT in a shirt like this. FT fam, there's a reason why True Classic has sold over 25 million shirts to more than 5 million customers, and they are racking up over 200,000 five-star reviews. See for yourself with our exclusive link at trueclassic.com/foul to save. That's trueclassic.com/FOUL.
You mentioned Ha-Seong Kim, and I wanted to ask about him anyway, so we'll do that now. And there are other things to talk about. Obviously, he's the new guy. It's been a week now. It's been a whole week, Grant, since he was brought in. So it feels like it's just yesterday. I wanted to ask you, it's not too late to do this, I think, what you thought about the process behind it, because it was one of those very, I don't mean this in a negative way, but it was a strange transaction. No one knew he was available. It's a guy we kind of floated. I know you probably did as well this winter as a potential target. It didn't happen. Now that we know he's here, at least for the rest of the season, and that's all they know. I mean, it's a player option, so he can opt out if he wants to. But what did you think of that whole thing? And obviously, he started out fairly well, 5-17 this week with a homer. Like, he's looked good, looked the part to what you hope he would be after some injuries. But going back a week, and obviously what you've seen now, what did you make of that whole thing? Because it was obviously not what you would have expected to happen on September 1st.
No, and when I wrote about it this week, it was more of you don't typically see a club in the position that the Braves are in looking to add players as you move into the month of September. Typically, who you've got is who you've got. Obviously, the winter will afford you some opportunities. The trade deadline didn't really change much as far as personnel was concerned for the Braves, whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. Ultimately, who knows? But I don't think that they were going to get a whole lot for anything that they were shopping. But Alex did say, and this was the question that I asked him in particular, which was, when you look at this winter, how important is it? And, how are you approaching it? And he brought up the fact that, look, we pursued some different things at the deadline that, even knowing where we were, or more importantly, maybe where they're not this year, that could help them beyond 2025. Ha-Seong Kim sounds like a discussion that could have been had around that time. That then you got into September that the Rays basically said, look, we can't cut him. He's got a player option, but we can put him on waivers. And if somebody just wants to take him off our hands, we can do that. So it kind of felt like a throwback move, because now that the waiver deals are no longer a thing and you can't do that kind of stuff anymore, you got the one trade deadline and that's it. I just felt like it was an outside the box, but a calculated risk, and quite possibly something that could at least provide the Braves with some upside at shortstop for the first time. And I feel like, 3 seasons? I mean, all respect to Orlando Arcia in 2023. He was perfectly fine. The last 2 years have been a black hole offensively. Nick Allen has been a tremendous defender. I don't know that I can say that enough, that he has been a net positive there, but you know what he is and you know what he's not. And then there's Ha-Seong Kim, who does a little bit of both and does it extremely well. He can run the bases. He does all kinds of stuff. So if he does decide that he wants to be here next year, that's a box you can check for the winter, where it's kind of Bo Bichette or nothing is what the shortstop market looks like to me, unless you want to go make a trade and get a guy like a Ha-Seong Kim. And so I think they just kind of got to jump on that. And so that was my read on where the Braves came from, kind of out of left field or out of nowhere, to claim a player that you wouldn't necessarily think is going to help out this year, because he's not, but they wanted to sell him on Atlanta. That was the other point that Alex made, was, hey, we get him under our roof here to see the team, to see the city, and kind of get them in the mindset of, hey, if we're going to pursue you in free agency anyway, maybe this is like an orientation. That was my read on all of that. And I think that Ha-Seong Kim is exactly the kind of move that Alex was talking about back on the 31st of July, when not really much happened, but now you can kind of consider this a fallout of that, if you will.
For sure. And I think it is interesting in its nuance. You bring up the Bo Bichette thing. We've always said this on the show, but like, it's so hard to get shortstops. Yep. Like, teams, if they have one, they don't want to trade you one. Like, I know it's easy to play. I mean, we all do it, hot stove, fantasy, whatever. It's really hard to get a guy who you want that other teams are willing to let go. And if they hit for agency, you don't have to look any further than Dansby Swanson. If you hit for agency, you get paid a pile of money, and probably a pile of money that's too much by the end of the contract. That's kind of the nature of free agency at that level. Bo Bichette, good player, not a great defender at shortstop. Alex, at least in my experience, tends to lean to defense at shortstop. I mean, that's kind of at least in the history of what he's done with the Braves. So you look at all that, you get kind of it's not a free shot. There's some risk to it too, as we've all discussed. Like that player option is looming out there. He can opt out of it even if he has an okay end of the season. Like, there's no guarantees even back on that contract.
Yeah.
But to your point, like you're taking a real chance at a quality starting shortstop in a way that's like very resourceful, is maybe the word I'll use. Alex is a creative executive. He's not afraid to do some interesting things that you're not seeing coming. I mean, go back to Chris Sale. I mean, I thought it was the most prominent example. Like, who had Chris Sale on the board that winter? Nobody. It was like nobody. And that obviously worked out as good as it could possibly go. So they're not all going to go that way. But he's not afraid to go in some strange places. And this is a strange place. But also, you go back 7-8 months ago, Grant, if the Braves had signed Ha-Seong Kim, it would have been like, oh, okay, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it certainly would have. But I think that, and this is the case for his entire market, was you're going to miss half the year with the shoulder issue. Where are you going to be the second half of the year? And clearly he played, 24, 25 games, whatever it was, with the Rays for $13 million. And the Braves will take on the final 2 of that. But the Rays typically don't spend 11, 12, $13 million or $29 million on pieces that they just don't see fitting for them. That's not an indictment on Ha-Seong Kim. I think that their shortstop situation behind him is developing in a way maybe faster than they expected it to. So they decided to pivot. And by pivoting, they're creative, they're resourceful, they're looking to move that money. The Braves, as we know, I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but I believe they've reset the luxury tax, which whether or not you looked at that as a deterrent to making moves, I don't necessarily. I feel like there is some double speak of, we expected to spend more, we didn't spend more. How do you reconcile all of that when you publicly say payroll has gone up every year? Now it doesn't go up this year and we don't have to spend a ton of time on this. But look, I understand the frustration of, because, I mean, we're the ones who ask the questions in a lot of cases, the royal we and the media, which, certainly can make some people happy, and we don't always make everybody happy, but we are trying to do our jobs and ask questions and get answers to it. But you can't make them say what you want them to say if they're not going to tell you that. And you can't just keep asking them until they break. This is not asking your parent for cookies until they finally break down. Here, fine, you can have them. It just doesn't work that way. So anyway, with that rant out of my system, I do feel like that there was a certain degree of expectation, maybe even for Alex at the start of the winter last year, and it just didn't develop that way. And I think there were some moves they would have made that they couldn't and didn't make because other teams swooped in and made those moves. Then they made the Profar move at the end to say, hey, well, we got to do something. And it's working now, but clearly an 80-game suspension wasn't anything you had on your bingo card. But to go all the way back to Ha-Seong Kim, if he had been healthy, I would have been interested to see how aggressive the Braves were in trying to sign him. I also would probably freely admit that 3, 4, 5 other clubs could have gotten in that mix. And the next thing you know, he's getting $120 million or whatever. He's a little bit older than obviously a Dansby Swanson or a Trevor Story or a Javi Baez or a Corey Seager or Marcus Semien, all these middle infielders that got huge contracts. He may not have gotten one of those, but I think he would have put together a pretty large deal regardless of how it all played out. So, it's a guy that made sense for the Braves previous, and they found a way to get him in. Now they're hoping that he decides, hey, I want to stick around here and kind of explore this option at least for a year, both figuratively and literally.
Yes, for sure. And I think I said this once before, but he was a guy, some of those mainstream projections, whether it's MLB trade rumors or Fangraphs, had him in like that $20 million a year range early in the winter last year. And that's the kind of player he is. As long as he can prove he's healthy, he's that level of player. So it's a lot of money that they would owe him potentially next year. And when you do this, you got to be willing and prepared to pay him that money because he obviously can opt into it. But he's that kind of player. This is a guy who averaged 3.5 Fangraphs WAR per season for 3 years. Like that's well above the production that you would need to justify the contract that he would be on potentially for next year. And also on your, I won't go back to the mini rant you just did, but I always find it funny that people want Alex, and really any executive, I cover basketball, similar thing there. Executives are never going to throw their own bosses under the bus on spending, because think about it logically. If you were in a meeting, would you throw your own boss under the bus, knowing that they're going to hear you throw them under the bus? Like, that's not how that works, Grant. Like, if Alex thought there was a payroll number and it came in lower than what he thought, he would not come out and say, you know what, Terry said I get less money now. That's not what he would say. It's just it's very logical if you think about it that way. Sorry, I'm not going to try to get anybody in trouble. It's just what it is.
No, and I understand that. And again, we don't have to go over this ground. And look, the expectation that folks have for the Braves should be sky high, because the Braves are an organization that was built to win right now, and that's what people should be expecting. It's a lot of things have gone wrong this year, somehow more so than went wrong last year, which I really didn't think was possible. But yet here we are in September. But I will say this, and I'm prepared to, carry the burden of this prediction, but they should be spending money this offseason. They should have money to spend, both from the avoidance of having to worry about the heightened luxury tax, because they have reset that, but also they have money coming off the books. Putting Ha-Seong Kim in say, the place of where Marcell Ozuna's $16 million was this year might be kind of part of the calculus that they're looking at. But what other moves could there be? What other trades could there be? Because I think that the Braves have shown in the past they can get really creative, and the Chris Sale one's a great example of it. I mean, it may not be a guy who wins the Cy Young the next year, but you know who else didn't have Chris Sale on the trade block when he went into the winter that particular a year before last? Chris Sale. He wasn't expecting to go anywhere. He didn't think anybody was going to call the Red Sox and say, you know what we need is Chris Sale, because he knew what he'd been through the previous 4 or 5 years. He wasn't expecting to go anywhere. But sometimes you're just able to find that value, and sometimes it pays off. Other times, it can be a little bit more difficult. It's a different story, different outcome at different times. But again, before we get lost into all of this, I just feel like there's a lot riding on this winter. I think it's fair to say that the Braves have a lot of questions to answer internally. I've said this, and I'll continue to say it. Everything needs to be out on the table to figure out. And I don't mean like trade everyone, fire everyone on the table. I mean, they need to discuss every aspect of the team and say, how are we getting the best out of this aspect? If they figure it out, move on to the next one. If you can bring somebody in, do it. If you have a move that makes sense, consider it, do it. If there are multiple different options out there, try to find the best one and move forward. But it's simply not going to be. I can't imagine a world where they're just like, yeah, what we've got in-house is fine. We're just going to move forward, because I think they learned this year that it can be very difficult, even if you've got a great roster, to get everything out of it that you need to, because once you play the games, even the best laid plans can go sideways, and they have.
I purposely did not ask you about this at the beginning of our conversation, but a couple of guys are struggling, and I wanted to ask you about what you think of it. The most prominent being Ronald Acuna.
Mhm.
I warned you about this. I did a little bit of a rant before I brought you in, which I won't make you listen to or rehash at all. I'm going to let Grant talk about it independent. He did not hear it. He doesn't know what I said, but I was not a huge fan of them sliding him down the lineup to 6th or 7th this weekend. But beyond that, and you can weigh on that if you want to, since he came back from injury, he's not been himself. He just hasn't been very good. It's only 88. I counted. It's 88 plate appearances since he came back. That isn't that many, Grant. It's not that many. That's like 3 weeks worth. It's not nothing. He's been in a funk that he's not used to be in. But that's a long tee up to say, what do you make of that? What are you seeing from Ronnie? And is there any concern about him moving forward? Because obviously we know what he is when he's right.
Yeah, I mean, I have no concern about him moving forward. I have no concern about him being out there playing, and I'm not really overly concerned about the fact that he's going through a down spell, which most players over the course of a season are going to find their way into. You hope it doesn't last for months and months, like say a Michael Harris or an Ozzie Albies, but nobody's immune to this kind of stuff. I mean, I think we have seen it, for long enough to understand that. But for Ronald, I have a few different thoughts. Number one, I would probably have never moved him out of the leadoff spot. And you can remove the probably. That's just not a thing that I would have done. However, I understand that at that time, the Braves had to try something. And they felt like, okay, this guy is a run producing, superstar player. Maybe it makes sense to just try this. And I have no issues with the fact that they tried it. I don't think it did a lot other than Profar has been very good and he's leading off, and that makes sense. But it hasn't done a lot for Ronald. It hasn't done a ton in the middle of the order. There's still a lot of moving parts, whether that's losing Austin Riley, and then Acuna goes on the IL, and then Baldwin's in and out of the lineup. Ha-Seong Kim comes in. Michael Harris gets hot. Michael Harris cools off. I mean, it's like the dials of this thing just keep moving up and down in different areas, and you can't really get just like a baseline of expectation for what they're going to be. That said, the offense has been better than it was in the first half. Here in the second half, I feel like it was the first maybe 7 or 10 games that Ronald was back from the calf injury. If I remember right, and I may be wrong on this, he reached base a lot in those first 7 to 10 games. It wasn't a ton of power. It's only the one home run since he's come back, but he was walking a ton. I think he walked 4 times in one game, maybe against the Mets on that road trip. And then since then, it's just been lights out, like 1 for 30 or whatever it is with 1 walk. He's not punching out a ton, but he's striking out a little bit. It's just, it hadn't looked great, but I've also seen him scald the ball a few times and it get run down. And again, I don't look at it as anything other than players go through this stuff. I just want to see him play baseball, close out this year, and move into 2026 and be back hitting at the top of the order where he belongs. As far as the hitting 6th, hitting 7th, that kind of stuff, I don't really know why we're going through that exercise other than if he is feeling like he's got a lot of pressure on him. That is a way to take some of the pressure off. I mean, I know Austin Riley got dropped down in the lineup some. I don't know if it was all the way down to 7th. That's happened. Matt Olson has been dropped some in the lineup, and that's maybe not all the way down to 7th. Again, I don't know why exactly we're doing that other than it's just September of a year in which the Braves have never experienced in Ronald Acuna Jr.'s career. They've never been this bad. They haven't. Statistically, this team, or at least one win-loss record, hasn't been in this position since the year before he came up. So it's some uncharted territory. Again, I think we're kind of rearranging deck chairs as far as the lineup is concerned. The ship is already sinking. As far as the Braves playoff hopes, they're already heading to the bottom of the ocean. But again, I just want to see him healthy. I want to see him out there playing. I know he's been tentative in the outfield too. I think Mark Bowman posted something about that on Sunday. I've been watching that pretty closely and thinking that's a ball that I would love to see if he felt healthy enough, like what that would look like, because I still think that there is that thought in the back of his mind, whether it's the calf or the knee or just good old-fashioned self-preservation after having to go through a couple of major injuries and miss a ton of playing time, where you just don't feel like yourself and you just don't feel confident about that. You don't want to make a bad play worse, so I can understand that. But yeah, there's just a few aspects of his game right now that are not up to that peak level of Ronald Acuna Jr. But I think there's more to be gained from him playing. There's, a case to be made that he could hit higher in the order and just slump there rather than moving him around. But again, I don't know that it really matters in the end, but I just want to see him finish the season, get in next year, get that healthy offseason where he's not rehabbing. And I think we're going to see a more fully formed and functional version of Ronald Acuna Jr. in 2026.
It's so funny too, because you look up even after this downturn, and he has a 147 WRC plus for the season.
Yeah.
It's like that guy's pretty good. Okay, just this is honestly almost more about our show than you, Grant. We are probably rightly accused of being I don't know if apologist is the right term, but maybe the high guys on Sean Murphy. And I think it's not really I think it's just being realistic about what Sean Murphy is. That's just me. But Sean Murphy has been a punching bag for a lot of fans. You know this for a couple years. And lately, he has been quite bad at the plate. I mean, that's just the long and short of it. His season long numbers look actually still kind of fine. Like, he's been a 2-win player. Like, it looks fine. But most of that damage was done early in the season. And I'm not going to go down the whole roster, but he's a guy that, it's worth talking about how kind of in a funk he has been too. I wonder what you make of that. And now that we had last year, which was much more injury based, I think, but maybe you disagree. Like, now we've seen this for a year and a half. It's not been the same as it was before that. So is that guy kind of in your mind? It's impossible to predict. I know. Is he going to come back to being that guy? What is this the new normal for Sean Murphy? Like, where are you at with that as far as at this point in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this in terms of the 2023 Sean Murphy that we saw. I think that for a lot of guys, that maybe that's the outlier year or the highest of highs that it's going to be for a player, whether that's Ronald Acuna Jr. or Matt Olson or Sean Murphy or certainly Orlando Arcia while he was here. He never got back to that level again, and I don't foresee that happening, and the Braves don't have to worry about that now. But more so with Murphy, I know when we talked to him in spring training, he said, look, the oblique didn't bother me in my return from the injury, but all the missed time, I never felt like I got my swing right. I do feel like at times this year he's had his swing right, but he is sharing time with Drake Baldwin for very good reason. There are also good reasons why he does start, especially for Hurston Waldrop and other times. I mean, I know a lot of folks want to see Drake Baldwin play every day. I've kind of thought going all along that, hey, look, this is a two-person. The Braves have said this, and I think we can understand that catching is pretty much a two-person job. The guys where it's not, it's kind of an outlier, but that's the way the Braves look at it. Why Marcell Ozuna gets extra starts at DH, I don't really know. And again,
that's my thing too. It's more. Why is Marcell playing? Anyway.
That's what makes it confusing, though, if we're really kind of breaking it all down. And it's nothing against Marcell, who's been – by all accounts, and I've been there to see it, a great, respected teammate. He's had his problems on the field. He's had his problems off the field. But when you kind of break down how he is viewed by the team and by his teammates, he is somebody of value in that clubhouse. So it's not shocking for me to see him get playing time. It's just been that the playing time has been seemingly at the expense of Drake Baldwin, but they're also not trying to beat the brakes off of Drake Baldwin down the stretch and break him all the way down, in September. Is as much as you want to see him win the Rookie of the Year award. I think that he is the front runner in my mind still. I know he's got some competition at this point, but I still feel like Drake is the leader when you really break it all down and take in the positional value of him being a catcher and all the stuff he's done this year. But they're not going to break him down in the search of individual accolade. I know a draft pick's attached to it. I know they'd like that draft pick, but they're, I think, just trying to manage through it the best that they can. It's the Marcell Ozuna of it that's a little bit confusing because obviously Murphy hasn't been swinging the bat well, so you can understand why Marcell might be getting more at-bats in that particular place. But what Sean Murphy does behind the plate also has value, so it makes this a rather convoluted and sometimes confusing timeshare between three guys for two spots.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I do think the baseline for Sean Murphy's bat is higher than it's been the last couple of months. I also don't know if it's, to your point, if it's going to be 2023 for Sean Murphy. We had a 130 WRC plus. I take the under on that being the real baseline, but
yeah. And I'd say this, I mean, if I'm looking at him, like not even getting into like advanced lines and different metrics or whatever, I kind of always viewed Sean Murphy as a guy that was going to hit somewhere between 240 and 250 with 15 to 20 home runs, a chance to drive in 50, 60, 70 runs, depending on his playing time, and OPS maybe somewhere around 750 to 800. That's kind of what I thought Sean Murphy is at his height. And if it's a little bit lower than that, maybe he's a 220 hitter with the same amount of power. RBIs are a little bit lower because he's not getting as many hits. I mean, just if you're looking at the good old-fashioned Triple Crown categories, but what he does beyond that is still of value. How he handles that staff, how he has helped Drake Baldwin with the game calling and preparation this year. I don't know if enough's been said about this, and it's not all just on Sean Murphy. The team obviously has everybody kind of meeting and doing these things, and they've been big on this for a while, but he is a net positive to this club. Now, what they do with his timeshare beyond 2025, those are, again, the discussions that the Braves have to have about how we are utilizing our funds, how we are deploying the players that we have in the best possible way. And they can figure out, what, if anything, they need to do as far as transactions to give Drake Baldwin more playing time when they get into the offseason. But Marcell Ozuna being out of the picture, I feel like kind of already creates the necessary at-bats, if you will, between Sean Murphy and Drake Baldwin. And maybe you give Ronald Acuna Jr. a little bit of DH here and there. Maybe you give somebody else a little DH time here and there. And just kind of use that as a way to keep somebody's bat in the lineup and not necessarily feel like you have to have one guy locked in. But when Marcell started hitting 40 homers and driving in 100 runs,
right,
you knew he was going to get those at bats. So the Braves have kind of been in a good place, but it's in some ways, and this is probably a gross exaggeration of 23 and 24, it's a blessing and a curse because you have a great DH who needs to play every day. But the downside is you can't take your other guys and just start them at DH because you don't want to take the other guy out of the lineup because he's one of your best hitters.
It does make it harder, and the baseline of how good that player has to be a full-time DH is really high. And Marcell, to your point, cleared it for a while.
Yeah.
But it's a really high baseline. You have to have a DH only player on this kind of team when you have guys, to your point, Ronnie, who might need not a day off, but a break every once. Even Profar, not a great defender. Maybe that there's several guys in this lineup that could use that kind of flexibility. But yeah, I mean, we actually agree, as much as people are probably going to be surprised by this, we agree on Murphy's baseline. Like, even in the last 3 years that he had in Oakland before he came over, he was OPSing in like 750.
Yeah.
And that's all by the way, 750 for a catcher who defends the way he does is great. Like, that's a star. He's not, Baldwin's a better hitter than him. I will grant that. I will openly talk about that. But, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to get you out of here. I promise you, Grant. One thing that popped up today that I wanted to make sure I asked you about before we sign off is that they gave Spencer Strider a couple more days. And that was, in a vacuum, fine. I think the way it was delivered was kind of odd. They waited till today to announce it, even though apparently Snit said it was decided 4 days ago and they just didn't tell anybody. Whatever. But that, of course, prompts questions about Spencer. Is he okay? Is he hurt? They immediately said no. But he's not been the same guy. I shouldn't say he's not himself. Maybe this is kind of a new normal, not this production, but he's pitching differently out of necessity. And as a guy, I know you've talked to many times. I'm sure he's going through a lot right now, like figuring out what he can and can't do. But this is I've kind of asked you this variety of question with a lot of different guys. But Spencer, I think, is almost maybe the most interesting of all of them because, like, if he's a different pitcher, it doesn't necessarily mean a bad pitcher. He still might be really good, but he's like clearly figuring it out. What have you seen as far as he's figuring it out?
He's had a really weird season to me because, like, he comes back and then he has to go in the IL for a month because of the hamstring. But in his first 5 starts, there were flashes of it, but he lost all 5 of them and had an ERA of, I think, 5.40 at that point. And you're kind of wondering, all right, what is this year going to be like for Spencer Strider? And then he rips off like this 8 or 9 start run, it felt like, of Spencer Strider-esque performances. A lot of swing and miss, tons of punch outs. Everything started to normalize a little bit. I mean, it's still, when you look at as they would say, the Braves will say, especially the back of the baseball card, it's going to look like a down year because it was a down year. I think that a couple of things are at play, at least for me, is how much do you expect out of a guy coming off of the procedure that he's coming off of? And if you're really being honest about it, I think that in some ways he's done the things that he needs to do. The important thing to me was, when people are like, well, he should not pitch again this year, Chris Sale should not pitch again this year, Acuna should not play again this year, I think that's just extremely misguided at best. It would be my way of putting that, because those reps matter more than just sitting around trying to manage yourself away from an injury, which, by the way, you can't. That does not work that way, has never worked that way, will never work that way. And if you start allowing guys to just not play because the games don't matter, you are on the slipperiest of slopes that you are never going to find your footing on again. So putting that aside and kind of getting really dialed in on Spencer, I haven't gotten to talk to him since he went to the Maven facility to really start to kind of, I think, reconstruct his fastball a little bit, or at least his any incremental improvement that he could make, because he wasn't getting as much run on his fastball as he has been in the past. And that's, to me, a bigger deal than is he not throwing it 99 or 100 miles an hour? It's, can he put it where he wants to with the movement that he needs to differentiate from his slider, and then pitch in wherever he wants to or fit in his other pitches to give him that complete arsenal. And his slider really had been problematic this year, more so than any other year. If you go look at his Savant page and look at his slider year over year over year, and obviously the fastball, the breakdown of the damage that's been done on each one of those pitches, you could kind of see that his dominant pitch was, which is a swing and miss slider, was just not the swing and miss pitch that he needs it to be. So if you're a fastball slider pitcher and your fastball's not working and your slider's not working, you're going to be very, very confused. I would say that's an identity crisis right there, because even if he is throwing 95, 96, 97 miles an hour, which he has been pretty routinely in most of these starts, I think his average fastball velocity in his last 2 starts were a couple of his highest of the season, but not as much swing and miss yet. But I also feel like every time that he can go out there and continue to work on it is meaningful. I think he said after this last start, it is hard with only 4 or 5 days in between to make a big time change that I feel like is going to sink in immediately. It's a fluid process. And the winter is a time for a lot of this work. Spring training is obviously a time for a lot of this work. But I think getting him through this year with whether it's 3 more starts, 4 more starts, I think it'd probably be closer to 3 starts remaining in the season if we're kind of breaking it all down for Spencer Strider. Get into the winter, not on a rehab program, be able to strength train, be able to work in any facility he needs to, or with the club on execution of his pitches and refining his arsenal without the specter of, oh yeah, and I got to start and I don't feel like myself. But he's going out there to compete because he's Spencer Strider and he wants to compete. And what he has to work with more times than not is probably going to put you in a place to win a ball game. But at the start of August, there were some definite questions about what in the world has gone wrong. Yeah. And how can you do some damage control? And that's why he ended up at that pitching lab to try to figure out something, because necessity is the mother of all invention. I think it's why Ronald Acuna Jr. is batting 7th right now. You're just trying to move some things around, just hoping that change will spark something. And that, I think, is for Spencer Strider as much as anything was, all right, I'm trying to do everything I can. Now let me see what I can change. Let me see what I can adjust to get through this, because I still think another mile an hour, maybe 2 miles an hour is still possible for him if he's able to strength train the way that he has in the past over the winter and come back in the spring. I think we could see a tick up in that velocity. Is he going to be the 101, 102 guy anymore? Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter. But he's got good enough pitches to not have to throw 100 miles an hour to be a successful big leaguer.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, but I want to give the number. The kind of proof of concept almost. That's probably a little too strong, but he had this 9-start stretch that you mentioned from, I think it was like through early August. So like mid-June through early August, where it was 9 starts. He struck out 68 in 9 starts and ERA in the 2s. And it wasn't fluky. Like, it wasn't like he was getting bad luck. Like, he was punching guys out, to your point, like pitching up without the 101 fastball. This is the post-injury Strider. So we saw it for a flash, 6 weeks or whatever it was. Yeah. Lost it again. But yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, you know him better than I do, of course, but like, he's such a cerebral guy. I have maybe outsized faith that he'll just figure it out. He's going to figure out what he has to do to get outs. Now, there is a baseline of stuff you have to have, but I think he still has it. Like, he's not throwing 89. Like, he's not suddenly Greg Maddux. He's soft tossing up there. Like, I think he's going to figure it out. That's my broad hypothesis, but I kind of believe that he's the kind of guy who's going to just be in the lab and tinkering until he figures it out.
And you know what was interesting too, because there's all that conversation about Walker Buehler getting cut loose by the Red Sox, and would the Braves go after him? And I kind of thought, well, if he's out there and they can get him, maybe they will, because I was immediately thinking about what Alex said about the whole, maybe we should bring some people in and see if they like it here and see if they want to stay here longer. And then the Phillies ended up getting him, which, is fine. I don't think you're missing out on anything particularly. But you look at Walker Buehler when he came up, much like Spencer Strider. I mean, this is a guy that's doing 98 miles an hour routinely. Now you look at him, he's doing 94 miles an hour. So he's lost a full, chunk of velocity. I don't think Strider's loss has been as marked as Buehler's has. He also, both of them have gone through the arm injuries. No 2 guys are the same. So, it could be apples and oranges. It could be apples and pomegranates. I don't know. But either way, I think you can kind of see by maybe judging where other people are on this, spectrum of what you need to be successful as a big league player. Spencer Strider still got a lot of those tools. Some of them I think just needed sharpening, or they needed to be a little bit recalibrated. And it is very difficult to do that between starts. I don't think that there's enough appreciation for how hard it can be to be able to, and with the expectation of not only am I going to make these changes, it'll help me out, but I've got to go be a dominator. You think he doesn't know that? Because that's pretty much what he's been. And so it's hard for him, I'm sure, to reconcile in some ways. And these are my words, not his, by the way,
Yeah.
that it's no fun being in the boat that he was in and not having the answers and not knowing what to be able to do to immediately fix it and course correct it.
Makes total sense to me. And just a guy that's not exactly a perfect synopsis of the team, but, down year, figuring it out, but has the talent to be the guy that still is a top line front of the rotation kind of pitcher. That's like kind of in the box of what the team is trying to do in general. It's like, hey, not to bring it full circle, not throw it out. Like, you're still looking at what happened this year, figuring out why it happened and all those things, but also there's room for optimism with Spencer in a way that there might be for the whole club. So maybe I'm trying to put this in too clean of a box, but it was a nice full circle moment there, Grant.
I mean, we do what we can, right? And I do think that, I would be surprised to see them chalk this one up to, it was just some injury and some bad luck. I think that there are some areas and inefficiencies for this club, whether it was from roster construction to just trying some things that didn't work out. And then, yes, injury was an issue. How long does it take to make adjustments? Because, again, I can just promise you they don't happen overnight. It's not as easy as just, so-and-so told me to raise my hands. Now all of a sudden I'm fixed forever. I mean, look at what happened to Michael Harris. You thought, hey, figured it all out.
Yeah.
Is Michael Harris going to hit 400 for the rest of the year? I don't think that was the expectation, but now maybe he just feels a little bit more equipped to be what he needs to be going forward. But it took a long time to get to that adjustment, and not to go off on a rant about that, but he said the same thing, which was Tim Hires had been working with him, wanting him to change where his hands were. He wasn't comfortable making that change. And this is not a coach's edict of, you're going to start doing this. You're not going to throw this pitch. You're going to throw that pitch. You're going to swing the bat this way and not that way. This is a collaborative process, and it's not easy for players to ditch things that have worked for a longer period of time to just get a quick gain and a quick turnaround that may not be sustainable. It's a very difficult process. And I know this is probably not going to make anybody feel any better about how the Braves have played this year, but just understand these are all human beings trying to solve these problems in real time against real competition. And when you're going through it, sometimes I feel like it has to feel like you're never going to find your way out of it. But typically over the course of a marathon of a season, you usually do, but there are definitely highs and definitely lows. Unfortunately, this is one of those years where we felt a lot more of the latter than we would have liked to.
That's right. Well, Grant, I have taken way too much of your time after you put in a full day of falconing. I appreciate you doing this. Before we sign off, tell folks that I can't imagine people not following you, but if they're not, they're making a mistake, number one. But where can they find all of your musings and written things and spoken things and all the things about the Braves?
Well, I appreciate that. You can find me on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. I do cover the Braves there. I have my show. It's called From the Diamond. It airs on weekends. Now that we're in football season, though, I'm going to kind of get moved around just a bit. Not having a show this weekend, but next week we'll be back at it on Saturday. You'll hear that conversation I had with Austin Riley, as well as some other combos that I had, including a good one with Nick Allen. That was a lot of fun to just kind of pick his brain on this season and the opportunity that it was for him to be an everyday player in Atlanta, even if that was certainly not on his bingo card or anybody else's to start the year. So a couple of things I got coming up. I also write for the Marietta Daily Journal. You can find my links to most all of these things on my socials, which is at Grant McAuley on X or on Instagram. And you can also subscribe to From the Diamond wherever you get your podcasts. I appreciate that as always. And yeah, I like to be around. I enjoy talking baseball, even if I don't get to choose the way that the season is going to go. It's still a lot of fun to be able to sit down and do this stuff. So I appreciate you having me on.
No, thank you for doing this, Grant. I appreciate it, and let me know if I can ever return the favor. We do some home and homes every once in a while, and I very much appreciate you taking the time. As for everybody else, follow Grant's work, as he just said, all those places. Subscribe to Hammer Territory, and we'll see you all next time.